I'd like to ask you some questions about your parents, and I understand they came from Japan. Do you
Yes.
know when they came?
I think my father came to this country in 1911, and about 2 years later, he married my mother and came back to America. Maybe 2, 3 years, something like that. Yeah. And they took up farming down there in Orange County. And that's where most of us were all born down there, you know.
And when did they come to Oxnard?
We came to Oxnard in 1937, I think it was, yeah. And, but of course, it took us a while to move up here because we had to move all our farming implements and we had to truck our horses up here. And so it took a while, about 2 years, but finally we got settled in Oxnard in 1937.
Do you know why they came to Oxnard as opposed to someplace else?
I think they probably came up here because they thought to Oxnard because they thought there were better opportunities in Oxnard. Maybe the farm, although the ground was more fertile in Oxnard. Well, there was my father and my mother, and then there was my oldest sister. She was married, and they were living. She and my brother-in-law were living with us, and I think right up to evacuation, we all went to camp together. Yeah, and the rest. I had an older brother, and he was working on the farm. And the rest of us were still in school yet.
I think you told me another time that you had a brother in Japan.
Yes. I had a brother. I had a brother. He's deceased now. He was born in this country, down in Orange County, and I think my mother took him back to Japan and left him with my uncle and aunt who were childless, and they raised him and sent him to school. And the uncle had a dry goods business, and my brother was trained in that, and he was drafted into the Japanese army. And my brother came for a visit. Yeah, I forget when it was, in the early '60s, I think. Yeah, and he was telling me that at the end of the war, he was stationed in Seoul, Korea, and he was a machine gunner because he had part of his index finger missing. And he says, I couldn't shoot a rifle, but I could shoot a machine gun because all I had to do was press a button with my thumb. And so I don't know how he got back to Japan, but apparently he made his way back. I think he paid the Korean fisherman that brought to take him back. Yeah.
Was it unusual for a family to send a child back to Japan like that?
Apparently at that time it wasn't all that unusual, but I wouldn't want to do that to my own children.
Tell us a little bit about your high school experience. Were you active in school events, or?
Not very. I just studied. After school, I had to work out in the field, so I didn't have time for any extracurricular work. Oh, I did go out for football one or 2 years, but I got banged up pretty good, so I stopped that.
Where was your family living before the war?
Before the war, in Oxnard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we lived on Patterson Road. Patterson Road and Woolley Road, but I don't know in which direction. It was going towards Wainimi. Yeah.
And did they rent that land?
Yeah, we leased it. Yeah.
Leased it. Do you recall how you heard about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Oh, it was. Oh, no, I heard it on the radio.
On the radio?
Yeah.
So you were in high school, and what happened after that when you went back to school?
Nothing much, except like there was an assembly called, and we all had to go into the auditorium. And then while we were going into the auditorium, the vice principal stopped me in the hallway, and he got to talking about how it would be like going into camp. And he says, "Oh, it'd be just like going into the army." And I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but afterwards I got to thinking, what kind of army would draft old men and women and little children and mothers with babies in arms?
Do you remember what they said in the assembly?
No, I don't. It had to do with America going into the war and so this and that, but I don't really remember what was said.
Could you tell us where you were and how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I was at home, and I heard it over the radio. There was another incident there about a week after the bombing. My brother-in-law and I were working in a cauliflower field just to the I don't know which direction it is. It's the road is called Channel Island Road Boulevard now. I don't know what it was called then, but we were on the Wainimi side of the road, and it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was a couple of naval officers came by, and said that this area is restricted, so you'll have to get out. So we just dropped everything and walked out of there. We harvested what crops we could, right up until the day of the evacuation, and we just left the rest of it.
And what happened to your belongings, your furniture and that sort of thing?
That was left in the house, and the house was just left the way it was.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little about the restrictions that came after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, like including the ID cards and that sort of thing.
I don't remember. I really don't remember whether they were their movements were restricted or anything like that. I remember we had a .22 rifle, single shot, and we turned that into the police department.
Did you have a radio? Oh, you had a radio. And a camera?
Radio, I don't remember having had to turn it, that sort of thing in. I think we were allowed to keep radios.
How about camera? Did you have one?
Camera, if it was camera, it was one of these little cheapy box cameras. Well, it was the first time I ever rode a train, and I think the train departed Ventura, the train station in Ventura, and we rode east, and we rode through the San Fernando Valley. We rode through a little town called Roscoe. I remember that, the sign. I read the sign there. And then we were out in the desert with all the cactus, and it was a very dry-looking place. And I remember making a stop in Bakersfield for about a half an hour. And then we got to Tulare about 5:30, about 5:30, somewhere in there. And we got off the train there, and we picked up all our belongings, whatever we could carry, and we walked from the train to the camp or the fairground. But we had to walk about a half a block down a dirt road, and then we had to walk across Highway 99 and into the fairground. And then they had MPs stationed all on both sides of this dirt road, and the MPs stopped traffic on 99. And the thing about that stuck in my mind was that the MPs were armed with submachine guns, and instead of these guns being pointed outwards as though they were protecting us, they had the guns turned towards us. I didn't think that was a very accommodating of them.
Do you remember, were the soldiers on the train with you?
I don't recall ever seeing any. I'd imagine there were.
And the shades were up on the,
The shades were up. We could see out,
So you were allowed to get off the train. When you got off the train in Bakersfield, was that?
No, we couldn't get off the train. It
train.
just stopped there for a while.
Oh, I see. Did you have any food on this trip?
I don't remember whether we had lunch or not.
Oh. So this was an all-day trip, and you.
Almost, yeah. We left the Ventura station about 9:30 in the morning, 10 o'clock, somewhere in there.
The local newspapers in Ventura and Oxnard describe the Japanese who left from the train as being stoic and cheerful, some of them. Do you remember how you felt when you left?
Yeah, I think we all would, because what could we do? I mean, there's no sense being all uptight about it. This is something we couldn't help. So, and even though we didn't know what was down the road for us, we just kind of accepted things as we went along.
Now, do you remember what it was like when you got to the fairgrounds?
Well, we went through the main gate there, and the next thing I remember, we walked around the grandstand, and in front of the grandstand was the shed or a barracks, and that's where we got registered. And if I remember, we still had our own belongings, and then I think it was there that we were assigned what barracks we were to live in. And so after that, we just picked up our belongings and went to our barracks. We were lucky. I think we were kind of lucky in that we got to stay in the horse stables.
Oh.
It was cool in there. The horse stable was all cleaned up. Inside was whitewashed. And each family, it was partitioned. And each family was allowed a certain amount of space. And we were given cots to sleep on.
So did all your family that live in that one horse stall?
Yeah, except for my sister and my brother-in-law. I think they had their own living quarters.
Were there any opportunities for you to do any work in the assembly area while you were there?
Yeah. At first, when I got there, I did some kitchen work, dishwasher, and I got tired of that, so I had a chance to work in the food warehouse, and so I worked in there until the time of it came to leave camp.
How did people find out about work, like jobs like that?
I don't know how came about. I guess you just went to the administration building office and asked. Yeah, I don't remember myself.
One of the people that I've talked to had a coupon book, and there were little coupons in it, and I was wondering whether those were used in the assembly area or just at camp. I mean, I'm concerned, how were you paid, for example?
You know, when I was in Assembly Center, I don't remember how we got paid. I think we did get paid some, about $16 or something like that. That wasn't much.
$16 for
per month.
Per month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe it wasn't even that much, but just enough to buy candy, this and that.
So did they have a store or something where you could buy things?
I think there was, yeah.
Did other members of your family work while at the assembly area?
My brother also worked in the food warehouse. And I don't know what my sisters and my younger brother did. My father worked as a cook in the mess hall. What my mother did, I'm not sure.
Now, how long were you at Tulare at the fairgrounds?
We got to Tulare, it was the last day of April, and we left Tulare on, it was either the September 4th or the 5th, you know.
So the whole family left together?
No, they left first, and I volunteered to stay to clean up the camp a little bit.
Do you remember how long you were at the assembly area and when they left or you left?
I don't know. Well, like I said, we were in Tulare from the 1st of May until about the 4th or 5th of September, through the summer months. And my parents left, about a week before I did. Yeah.
And you decided to stay?
I decided to stay, and I volunteered to help clean the camp up.
What were the accommodations like in Gila compared to Tulare?
The accommodation
What were the accommodations like in Gila compared to Tulare?
The accommodation in Gila was still very incomplete. The camp wasn't even finished. So I'd have to say that the Tulare accommodations were much better. But then as time went on, the camp in Gila was completed, and everything kind of settled down. I remember seeing scorpions crawling around, open drainage ditches and things like that.
One of the questions I want to ask you is whether the internment camp was fenced in.
The camp, Tulare was fenced in, but not Gila when we got there. It was wide open. In fact, when I arrived in Gila, I think that about the day or two afterwards, I met up with all my old buddies from Tulare, and they said, "Oh, there's an Indian village out there about 4 or 5 miles." So we decided we'd all go out there and find out what was what. So we just took off and went. And it took us about, I don't know, 2 hours of walking to get there. But sure enough, there was a general store there on one side of the road, and then and the school. I think the school was run by some Catholic sisters. And so we were able to buy candy and ice cream and whatnot, chewing gum. Well, we were there for about maybe half an hour, and we got ready to come back or start back, and there was this a flatbed truck, a Model A Ford. An Indian was driving it, and he stopped, and we persuaded him that we'd give him all our little change, and what little change we had, would he mind taking us back to camp? And he said, sure, hop on. So that's what we did. We all jumped on his truck, and we went down the road for maybe half a mile, and here comes a MP, a corporal. He comes down, and he flags the truck down, and he tells everybody to get off the truck because this Jeep is stuck in the mud. And so we went down the side road there, and sure enough, there was this Jeep stuck clear up to the axle in mud. And there was this officer sitting on the right side of the Jeep, just sitting there like this. and he wasn't moving. He wasn't even attempting to get out of the Jeep. And so we got behind the Jeep and we pushed him out of the mud. And then we thought, well, gee, maybe this lieutenant will give the Indian, the truck driver, a tank full of gas or something. So, but he says, everybody get back on your truck, get back on the truck and follow me. So we all got on back on the truck, and then we followed the Jeep, and he took us back to the canal camp. And he says, all right, now everybody get off the truck and line up on the bank there of the canal there. And he starts to lecture us, and he says, who told you you could get out of leave the camp like that? Anyway, one fellow from, I think he was from Pasadena. He says, well, there was no boundary line or no boundary marker or no sign posted that says we couldn't go beyond this point. But that was the only one that I remember.
After they put up the fence, were there consequences? Did people try to leave the camp?
There was one old man. Now, I don't know whether he might have been kind of strange in his head or something. Anyway, he left camp, sneaked out, or anybody could just leave camp, just step through the barbed wire and go out. Anyway, he left, and he was unreported, so they had a massive manhunt for him, and I took part in the manhunt, and we all walked out into the desert, but we never did find the man. I think they carried out, they had the search went on for 2 or 3 days, and they never found a trace of him. But now, after I left camp and went to Dayton, Ohio to work, I met one of my buddies from camp came out to work with us, and he said that some cowboys found a skeleton out in the desert. Now, how true that was, I don't know. But
could you tell us some about the social life in Tulare and in Gila?
Other than these Saturday night dances and the movies, there wasn't much else. While in Tulare, we all went up into the grandstand and they showed the movies.
They would be showing, what kind of movies would they show you?
I don't remember, but they were old.
Old movies.
And then in Gila, they set up the screen, outdoor screen, and we all sat on the side of the butte or a hillside.
Would that be the one that had the water tank on top?
Yeah, there was a water tank on top of that, and we sat on the side of the you know. So.
While you were in Gila, were there ways that people could find out what was happening in the war or on the outside world, outside of camp?
Yeah, you could listen to the radio. I suppose you could read, they had a newspaper, but I wasn't all that concerned about it. I knew that Japan was winning the war during the early stages, but I don't know when the tide turned.
I was wondering if you remember any political action at Gila.
Whatever political action there was mostly done by the Kibe faction. If you know what the Kibe were, the American-born Japanese who were educated in Japan, and they were kind of actively anti-American. And the story goes that one time, I think maybe on the emperor's birthday or something, somebody had stuck a big Japan flag on top of the butte near the water tower. But that's the story. I never saw it.
So you worked at the camouflage net factory. How long did you work there?
From January of 1943 until about the middle of May of 43. For some reason, I don't know what happened, but they just closed it down.
How did you become involved in that work?
Well, they had they put up this camouflage shed, these tall sheds to weave camouflage nets. And we got word that they were forming crews. And so a friend of mine and I, we both signed up. And we worked, there must have been about 5, maybe 6 guys to a crew. And we basically taught ourselves how to weave. And I don't know what the pay structure was, but it was better than $19 a month. I think at one time, I remember one paycheck, I think I got about $126 for 2 weeks work, which I think was pretty good pay.
How big were these nets?
Nets were about 15 by 15 feet, somewhere like that.
And what were they made out of?
They were made of, just like fishing nets, of heavy twisted twine. And they were dyed green, and the burlap strips were about 2 inches wide, and they were dyed in different colors, like the landscape that they were supposed to blend in with. And then it wasn't a very helpful work because as you was weaving, you'd breathe in the lint, and that was not very good. After the camouflage net plant shut down, I went to work for the model shipbuilding plant in Camp 2, or the Canal Camp, and I worked there until I was ready to leave camp. I heard that she was going to be in camp, but I really didn't expect to see her. But as we were weaving the camp, lo and behold, there she was. She was no more than about 10, 12 feet from me. Mm. And she had on a big floppy hat. I think that was a trademark. Very tall, stately lady. We were allowed to leave camp, and this was about in the late summer of '43, and you could leave camp if you accepted a position that or you took a job that was listed, you know, and the people who offered the job were willing to take you on, and so that's I don't know whether we wrote back or the administration did that for us, but anyway, we got the job in. When I say we, it's just a friend of mine and myself. Well, got a job at a nursery in Dayton, Ohio. We went to work over there.
What kind of work was that?
Well, it was potting little plants, and the man we worked for was also a landscaper, and he had a outdoor nursery where he had trees and shrubbery planted, and as he needed plants for his landscape work, he would label the certain plants, and we'd go in there and dig it up and ball and burlap them. And his landscape crew would come in the morning and pick them up. Where we were in Ohio at the nursery in Dayton, the people were very friendly. I never saw such friendly people. I think for the most part there were people of German descent. But anyway, whether they were or not, it didn't matter. They were sure friendly. I mean, they went out of their way to be friendly with us. After I left the nursery, it was in '44. I think it was about May or so. Well, I decided to go up to Cleveland, Ohio, and so I quit the job in Dayton and I moved up to to Cleveland, and I was working in a auto repair shop there, and I think I worked most of the summer there, and then toward the end of the summer, there was I don't know what kind of party it was, a birthday party or whatever. There was a party that we went to, and that's where I met my wife.
And you've been married almost 58 years now.
Yeah, since March 17th of 1946. She was doing housework, and she was going to art school, I think.
So how long did you stay in Ohio before you moved back here?
Totally, we were there including Dayton, I was there in 1943, September, until, when was that? Oh, March 18th of 46. So 43, about 3 years, maybe. We always did figure one of these days we'd like to come back to California. And then there was an offer made by the government to pay our train fare back to California for those who left camp by a certain day, and we qualified for that. So in order to take advantage of that, we got married and we came back.
And where did you come back to when you came back here?
We came to, well, we stopped in Houston, Texas to visit our folks, to introduce my wife to my parents. And then we got back on the train and we came to Los Angeles. And there was an old hotel on First Street, downtown, called the Miyako Hotel. And we stayed there for about a week, maybe 10 days, I don't remember, until housing was made available for us in Santa Monica, right on Santa Monica Boulevard. There was a private home that had several rooms, and each room, these rooms were rented out to different families. And the one front bedroom was reserved for us, so we moved into that.
What kind of work did you find when you got back here?
Well, I went to work for a Nash dealer in Santa Monica, right on, I think, Wilshire Boulevard. He's not there anymore, but
So at that point, you were working, and was your wife working as well?
was that
Your wife working as well?
Yeah, but I don't remember what she was doing. She had a job, though.
She had a job. And when were you able to move out of this one room?
Oh, we were in that one room house, let's see, for about 3 months. And there was a friend of ours who was in the fish, you might call him a fishmonger. He went around the different families and sold fish and Japanese food and such. And he said, he told us that there was an apartment available in Santa Monica, another part of Santa Monica. And so we went over there, and they agreed to rent to us.
Was there a problem with renting or buying things if you were Japanese?
Not to us, but I understand there were what they called restrictive covenants or something like that, where if you were not a white or anything other than a white, you weren't allowed to buy in a certain section or certain area.
How would you say that your experience of being interned changed your life?
Well, you gotta understand, I was only, 18 or 19. I've never been exposed to the outside world except to work on a farm. So whatever experience I had was all new to me. So I think it kind of, I met new people, different places. And well, all in all, even though being interned like that may have seemed like a great injustice, but in a way, in my sense, I think it was a kind of a very enjoyable experience. I didn't particularly mind it that much.
What did you think about the reparations movement later on?
Well, that was a nice thing to have, be given this money, but I feel sorry for the old folks, our parents, the first generation or East Say, who were too old and had died off, and they should have been given the money. It's too bad that they didn't, that the reparation wasn't paid sooner.
How old were you when you went to camp?
I was 19, I think. Yeah, 19.
And how long were you in camp?
Well, I was in camp from May of 42 until September of 43. So that would make that, 1 year and about, 4 months or so.
Mm-hmm. And you are how old now?
I'm now 80, going on 81.
Could you tell us something about your graduation in 2002 in Oxnard?
Well, it was kind of a surprise to me. and I really didn't intend to take part in it, but Yoshi kind of talked me into it, so I went. And as it is, it turned out to be quite a memorable day. Yeah, and it was I think it was a ceremony which kind of gave the old 42 graduates a diploma that they didn't get at the school's graduation.
After the war, when you were living in back in Los Angeles or in Santa Monica, could you describe? Did you save your money so that you could buy a house? Is that what happened next?
Yeah, we saved our money, and my mother-in-law let us have some money, and then we scraped up enough to buy, put it down on the house. It was in the old part of Venice.
Maybe you'd tell us a little bit about what kind of jobs you've had since then. Well, I know you're retired now.
Mostly I worked in auto repair shops, but I wasn't making any money because jobs wouldn't come in all that often. So I quit that and I went into gardening in I think it was in 1948, somewhere in there. And I've been gardening ever since, until my retirement in 1988.